There was a notice stapled to my front door that said my house was under lien. I thought it was a scam until I saw it was signed by my own damn HOA. Over windows they approved. Back when I bought that place, I honestly thought I'd finally outsmarted life. I'd just come out of a messy divorce that left me feeling like I'd gone 12 rounds with a wrecking ball. 18 years of marriage, and all I walked away with was half a retirement account, a slightly dented Toyota, and this lingering sense that I was a visitor in my own damn life. So when I found that 2-bedroom end-unit townhome just off Lake Wylie, tucked into a quiet cul-de-sac with nice landscaping and even nicer neighbors, I didn't think twice. I didn't care about the HOA at the time. I just wanted peace, a place where I could sit on my porch with a cold beer and not feel like I was failing at something. The first time I stepped into that house, I swear, it felt like it was holding its breath for me. Everything was kind of dated. The original windows had those old-school wooden frames with peeling paint and rusted latches that squealed like dying seagulls every time I tried to open them. But the bones were solid. Big kitchen, clean bathrooms. Enough space for my daughter, Ash, to stay when she was home from college. It needed work, sure, but it was mine. That meant something. I grew up in a military family, moved every couple of years, always packing up just when I'd get used to the smell of a new place. Then I joined the Navy out of high school, served 8 years, and repeated the whole damn thing all over again. So yeah, stability never came easy to me. That house felt like the first time I put down real roots. No landlords, no inspections, no one checking whether I hung a flag or parked my truck nose in or backed into the driveway. Just me, my home, and some mild yard work on the weekends. The HOA wasn't even on my radar at first. I got the welcome packet, skimmed through the rules about trash cans and fence heights, and figured whatever, I can keep my grass short and not paint my house neon green. Didn't seem like a big deal. They even sent a welcome to the neighborhood card with a coupon for a free pizza from the local place. Real cozy vibes. I threw myself into fixing the place up little by little, ripped out the stained carpet, and laid new laminate floors with my own 2 hands, which, let me tell you, absolutely ruined my knees for a month. Swapped out the old yellowed light switches, its points on states, installed smart thermostats, and replaced the ancient smoke detectors. I could saw it. I wasn't trying to flip the place or anything. I just wanted to live in a home that felt like me. But the windows. Those windows were the one big thing I knew I had to deal with. They were drafty as hell, and every time it rained, I'd find water pooling at the corners like the house was slowly crying itself to death. The heating bill that first winter hit me like a bag of bricks. I tried weather stripping and plastic film kits, but it was like putting band-aids on bullet holes, so I started researching replacements. I landed on these vinyl double-pane models that had great insulation, good reviews, and came in a soft beige color that frankly matched the rest of the unit better than the nasty off-white original ones. I even took pictures, mocked it up with a home design app just to make sure it would blend in. And then, like a good little homeowner, I filled out the official HOA architectural change request form. I attached the product info, the installer's details, even included before and after mock-ups. Sent the whole packet via email and certified mail, just to cover my bases. 3 weeks later, I got a signed approval back from the architectural committee. Said it looked good, proceed as planned. No notes, no conditions, nothing about color inconsistencies or aesthetic disruption. Just a green light and a smiley face emoji in the email signature from one of the board members. I printed out 3 copies and saved the email in a folder labeled HOA, Keep Forever. Installation day felt like a win. The crew came in, did the work fast, cleaned up after themselves, and the house immediately felt 10 degrees warmer. The vinyl frames were clean, smooth, modern, not flashy, not out of place, just better. You couldn't even tell the difference from the sidewalk unless you were actively looking for it, and even then, only if you had binoculars and were some kind of beige connoisseur. Ash came down to visit that weekend and said it finally felt like a home, not just a bachelor cave with central heating. We sat on the couch, watched some old Star Trek reruns, and ordered Thai takeout. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving, I was actually truly okay, and for a little while, everything was quiet. No angry letters, no weird looks from neighbors, just silence. Looking back, that silence wasn't peace. It was the sound of a trap being set. I just didn't know it yet. I remember the envelope looked like one of those pre-printed donation requests or grocery coupons. You know the kind, a weird-sized white envelope with a window, slightly off-center address label, and that strange texture like they ran it through a copier that hadn't been cleaned since the Bush administration. I was about to toss it, honestly. I had one hand over the trash can when I noticed the return address, Yachtsman on Lake Wylie Homeowners Association. That gave me pause. Usually when they sent stuff, it was about community garage sales or reminders about pool hours, but this one felt different. I opened it right there at the kitchen counter with a beer in one hand and a half-made sandwich in the other. What I pulled out felt like I'd accidentally read someone else's bad news, until I realized it was mine. It was a notice of non-compliance. Apparently, my windows were in violation of Section 4.3 architectural standards, due to an unauthorized deviation from approved community aesthetic. That was the phrase they used, community aesthetic. Like I'd spray-painted flames on my siding or hung a massive neon open 24 hours sign on the roof. I just stood there for a second, rereading it. I wasn't even angry yet, just confused. I mean, I had approval, signed, sealed, and emailed. I went back to my office, opened the HOA folder, and sure enough, there it was, date-stamped, with the committee chair's signature and a "looks great, thanks for submitting" note, so I figured easy. Fix, misunderstanding, maybe someone new joined the board and didn't see the approval on file, it happens. People misplace stuff. Bureaucracies eat their own paperwork all the time. I typed up a short, polite reply, attached the original approval PDF, and sent it over with a friendly, "Hey, just wanted to clear this up. I've got the green light here. Let me know if you need anything else." No drama. I wasn't trying to stir the pot. Didn't hear anything back for a week. Then came another letter. Same cheap envelope, same window, same letterhead. This one wasn't so polite. It said that due to my failure to promptly correct the unauthorized modification, the HOA was considering further action, including remedial enforcement measures. It didn't explain what that meant, just hinted at it like some vague threat from a high school vice principal. There was a line in bold that said, "Homeowners are reminded that pre-approval does not constitute permanent compliance." Now, that one stuck in my head. I read that sentence 3 times. Pre-approval does not constitute permanent compliance. What the hell does that even mean? You approve the work, I do the work, and then you can just change your mind? It felt like someone had moved the goalposts after I kicked the ball. That's when I started getting this gnawing feeling in my gut. Not full-blown dread, not yet. But something wasn't right. The tone had shifted. I kept thinking, maybe this is just one board member going rogue. Maybe it's a personality thing. I mean, I'd never had issues with anyone in the HOA before, but I also hadn't been to a single meeting. And you know how these small boards go. It's always that one guy who takes his clipboard way too seriously. So I tried again. I emailed the board directly this time, attached everything. Approval form, before and after photos, product specs, even the installer's invoice. I laid it all out as clean and clear as possible, and still nothing. Then, about 4 days later, I ran into my neighbor, Lori, sweet lady, retired teacher, lived 2 doors down. We were both walking out to get the mail, and she kinda leaned over, lowered her voice like she was about to gossip about someone's affair. She goes, "Hey, just a heads up. I overheard Garrett at the last board meeting talking about your windows. Sounded like he's trying to make an example out of someone. I thought it was about the guy who installed solar panels, but now I'm thinking maybe it was you." Garrett. That was the HOA president. I'd never really interacted with him. I'd seen him maybe twice. Once trimming his hedges with laser focus, the other time silently judging someone's Halloween decorations from across the street like a spooky suburban scarecrow. I laughed it off at the time. Me? Nah, I did everything by the book. But even as I said it, I could feel it starting. That shift. That weird itch behind your brain when you realize the air in the room changed and you didn't notice when. It was subtle, the kind of thing you'd brush off if you weren't paying attention. But I've lived through enough storms to know when the barometric pressure starts to drop. And this was the first gust of wind. I wish I could say that was the worst of it, that maybe it all stopped with some cranky letters and a little posturing. But no. That first notice, that was just them ringing the doorbell. What came next was them kicking it in. It started with the fines. Padoes. Quiet, unannounced, like they didn't even want me to notice until it was too late. I checked my HOA account one night just out of curiosity, and there it was. A bright red balance, $300, 3 separate $100 charges listed as daily fine, architectural violation. I rubbed my eyes like I was misreading it. No prior warning, no email, no phone call. Just bam, fines, retroactive no less. So I emailed. Again, I attached the approval. Again, I asked calmly if someone could clarify why I was being fined for windows that were already approved and installed with no issue, until suddenly someone somewhere decided they weren't beige enough or whatever the hell their problem was. No reply. A few days later, another charge, $100. It had become a daily thing. Apparently, every morning like clockwork, my balance ticked up. $500. Then $800. Then $200. Watching it was like watching a gas pump spin while someone else filled the tank. With your money. That was when I started to lose sleep, not just the I'm a little anxious kind of sleep loss. I'm talking wide awake at 3 in the morning, heart pounding, brain spinning in circles, wondering how the hell I was suddenly enemy number 1 in a neighborhood where the wildest thing that usually happened was someone's dog pooping on the wrong lawn. And the worst part? No one talked to me. Not one board member, not Garrett, not the architectural committee. Not even a robo-email from a no-reply address. Just these cold, clinical fines that kept stacking up like parking tickets in a ghost town. I started calling around. I tried the HOA's management company. Got voicemail. I tried the community hotline. Mailbox is full. I sent certified mail again. No response. It felt like I was yelling into a canyon. And all the while, the fines were building, like a debt collector with a stopwatch. Eventually, I got desperate and walked into one of the monthly HOA meetings. Now, let me paint this picture for you. Folding chairs in a half-lit rec room that still smelled like the chili cook-off from a week ago. About a dozen residents, some bored, some irritated, and 5 board members up front behind a folding table like the world's least enthusiastic talent show judges. Garrett sat dead center, arms folded, that kind of performative stillness that people use when they want to seem more powerful than they are. Bald, intense, with the eyes of a man who's memorized every section of a rulebook and weaponized it. When I brought up the fines and the window approval, the whole room went tense. Garrett waited until I was done talking, didn't even look at the approval letter I brought. Then he smiled, this slow, patronizing thing, and said, "Preliminary approvals are not final if materials installed do not match submitted samples. Your windows deviate from the appearance standards as defined by community guidelines." I asked him where that was written. Like what part of the guidelines? Could he point me to it? He didn't. He just leaned back in his chair and said, "You should review the guidelines again, thoroughly." Someone else on the board, I think her name was Diane, chimed in to say they empathized, but that consistency of appearance is critical to property values. Then Garrett dropped the kicker. Non-compliance, if not addressed, will result in a lien being placed on the property. It didn't even sound like a threat. Just a board announcement, like he was reading off a lunch menu, and the others, they didn't even blink. No one asked questions. No one backed me up. It was like they'd already had the meeting before the meeting, and I was just there to be officially ignored. I walked out of there shaking. Not angry, not yet. Just stunned. That kind of stunned where your body's ahead of your brain, like it knows something terrible is coming before you do. And it got worse. About a week after that meeting, I got a letter from the county clerk's office. A notice of Lien had been filed against my home by the Yachtsman HOA, just like that. I called the clerk's office in a panic, thinking it had to be a mistake. The woman I spoke to was polite, but flat out said, "No, it's valid. It's a legal instrument filed by the HOA. You'll need to resolve it with them directly." You know that feeling when your legs go cold? Like your body just flushes itself out and all your instincts start screaming at once. I sat at my kitchen table holding that letter and realized something. They weren't just trying to punish me, they were trying to scare me. This wasn't about windows, it was about power, about control. Garrett didn't care about the damn vinyl frames. He wanted me to back down, to obey, to fold like everyone else probably had before me. I'd be lying if I said I didn't consider it. There were nights I'd sit in the dark, staring at those windows, wondering if I should just rip them out, eat the loss, and be done with it, get the pressure off my chest, sleep again, but every time I got close to that thought, I'd look at the approval sitting on my desk, black ink on white paper, signed, dated, clean, and I'd think, no, you don't get to do this to people just because you're wearing a name badge and sitting behind a folding table. Still, I was one man against a wall, and I had no idea just how high it went. Yet, I still believed I could fix it. I know, sounds crazy now, but back then, I genuinely thought there had to be some way to get through to these people. I wasn't some guy trying to game the system. I wasn't running a casino out of my garage or painting cartoon murals on the siding. I just installed windows. With their approval, it all felt so fixable, so I tried the grown-up thing. The reasonable route. Dadikmaits. First stop was the property management company that handled communications for the HOA. I figured maybe Garrett and his board were just overzealous or confused, and someone at the management office would take one look at the documentation and go, "Oh geez, our bad, we'll call the dogs off." I showed up in person, sat in the lobby with my neat little manila folder of paperwork like I was applying for a job. I waited almost 40 minutes while the receptionist kept disappearing into the back. When someone finally came out, some guy in khakis who looked like he just woke up from a nap under his desk, he barely glanced at my folder before saying, "Unfortunately, we defer to the HOA board on architectural enforcement. You'll have to work that out with them directly." I asked him if they even had the approval on file. He shrugged. Not a no, not a yes, just a shrug, like I'd asked if he believed in ghosts. So that was a bust. Next, I tried mediation. Turns out the county offers voluntary dispute resolution services. Basically, you sit down with a neutral third party and try to hash things out before it becomes a full-blown legal battle. I thought it sounded promising. Civil.productive adult. I submitted my request and waited, and waited. HOA ignored it. Just flat out refused to participate, didn't even send a form response. The mediator called me and said, "Well, we can't force them to come to the table, unfortunately." She sounded genuinely sorry. I thanked her and hung up, staring at my phone like it had betrayed me personally. At that point, the lien was still hanging over my house, and the fines had hit $7,800. I kept thinking I should call a lawyer, but hiring legal help felt like pushing the red button. Like I was admitting this was war, not some weird paperwork error, and honestly, I wasn't sure I could afford that button. I called around anyway. Most real estate lawyers I spoke to quoted me consultation fees that made my chest tighten. Some told me flat out, yeah, these cases can go either way. HOAs have a lot of leeway. One guy even laughed and said, "You wouldn't believe how many people lose their homes over stuff like mailbox colors." Eventually, I found someone who sounded like he didn't want to bleed me dry. James Hunt, soft-spoken, mid-50s, voice like gravel in a paper bag. He'd been handling HOA disputes for over 2 decades and had the calm, exhausted demeanor of a man who's seen way too many grown adults ruin their lives over lawn ornaments. We had a consultation. I laid out everything, the approval, the photos, the fines, the lien. He didn't blink, just nodded, asked a few quiet questions, then said, "You're not crazy, this is overreach, but it's going to cost you to prove it." That hit me hard, because by then, the financial part had already started bleeding into everything else. I had to take out a home equity line just to cover the rising fines and legal prep. My credit score took a dive. My refi came back at a higher rate than I'd planned, which meant bigger monthly payments. I cut back on pretty much everything, canceled streaming services, stopped eating out, even paused contributions to my daughter's college fund. But worse than the money, the emotional drain. The weight. Every morning I'd check my mail like it might explode. Every night I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for the next shoe to drop. I started snapping at people, Ash noticed. She called me one night after I missed her call 3 times in a row and just said, "Dad, you sound like someone I don't know." That broke something in me. I finally went to see my doctor. I wasn't sleeping. I couldn't focus. I felt like a wire stretched too tight. After a few questions and a quiet moment, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're having panic attacks. This is anxiety and it's affecting your health." She prescribed meds. Light ones, just enough to get me breathing again. I started taking walks in the evenings just to keep my mind from collapsing in on itself. I'd pass by my own windows and try not to look at them too long, like they might judge me back. I even tried once more to reason with Garrett directly. I knocked on his door. He opened it halfway, stood there with that same unreadable expression, like a cop pulling someone over who already knows he's writing the ticket no matter what comes out of your mouth. I said, "Look, Garrett, can we talk, man to man? I just want to understand how this got so out of hand." He didn't budge. He said, "The board's position is final. The fines stand. The lien is valid." That was it. Door didn't slam. Didn't have to. Just clicked shut like a lock, sealing in the final answer. I walked home in a fog. I remember the crunch of my boots on the sidewalk, the faint hum of someone's lawnmower in the distance, and thinking, I really might lose my home over this. My little patch of peace, the place I rebuilt my life in, everything I'd done, followed the rules, filed the forms, stayed respectful, none of it mattered. That night, I sat out on my back porch with a drink in my hand, feeling like a man being quietly erased. I didn't want to fight, but they left me no choice. I don't know what exactly I was expecting when James called me that afternoon, but I wasn't expecting that tone in his voice. He usually sounded calm, like a guy who could talk someone through a hostage situation while sipping coffee. But that day, there was a tightness in his voice, like he was holding in something that wanted to burst out. He said, "You sitting down?" I remember saying something like, "If this is about another bill, just tell me how much kidney I need to sell," and trying to laugh, but it came out flat. James didn't even chuckle. He just said, "They screwed up, Michael. Big." My heart started pounding. I didn't say anything, just sat there clutching the phone like it might try to run away. He went on, "Remember that approval form? The one with the signature from Heather Klein?" I did. Heather had been on the architectural committee. Her signature was right there in the bottom corner of the form I got back. James said she wasn't supposed to be signing anything, not at that time. Turns out Heather had been temporarily suspended from the committee when she signed off on my window request. Some kind of internal dispute, a conflict of interest, something to do with her brother-in-law bidding on landscaping contracts for the HOA. Whatever it was, she wasn't authorized to approve anything for a 3-month window, and my request fell right in the middle of that. I remember blinking and going, "Okay, but how the hell is that my fault?" James said, "Exactly. You didn't know. You couldn't have known. And the kicker, the board never corrected it, never reissued the approval or rescinded it properly. They sat on it, let the installation go through, and then waited until it was done to come after you. That landed like a gut punch, not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. They knew, they had known all along." James continued, "There's more. I got a call from someone, a board member, off the record." My breath caught. Now, I'd like to say I'm the kind of guy who keeps a poker face, but I damn near choked on the air. "Who?" I asked. "Utsnalis." He wouldn't say it first, said she was scared of retaliation, but after some coaxing he told me it was Sarah Miller, the HOA treasurer. I vaguely remembered her from that meeting. I crashed, the one where Garrett stonewalled me. She'd sat at the end of the table, scribbling notes, didn't say much. I wouldn't have even pegged her as someone who had my back. But apparently she'd been watching it all unfold, quietly, uncomfortably. Sarah had started digging through some internal communications, trying to make sense of how the board had gone from signing off on my windows to threatening foreclosure. She found something, a chain of emails between Garrett and the other board members. In one of them, and this is the part that hit me like a damn truck, Garrett wrote, "We need to make an example of Cross. Can't have homeowners thinking they can take liberties just because someone rubber-stamped their form. Set the tone now or we'll be fielding violations for every porch light and doorknob on the block." He literally admitted it. In writing, this wasn't about aesthetics. It wasn't about color matching. It was about control.optics, setting a damn tone. I couldn't stop shaking. James was saying something else, probably something smart or important, but I couldn't process it. I just kept staring at the same spot on my kitchen counter where I used to stack my utility bills, like somehow that old pile of junk mail might give me answers. They'd targeted me on purpose. And the best part? Sarah had the emails, all of them. She didn't just forward them to James, she printed them. It's bully. Saved backups. Well, even had screenshots with timestamps from the HOA's internal system showing Garrett editing the violation log after the fact, trying to retroactively cover his ass. That was the moment everything shifted. Up until then, I'd been surviving. Drowning quietly in legal threats and fear and mortgage bills I could barely afford. But now I had leverage. Proof. Look, they wanted to make an example out of me, fine, but they sure as hell picked the wrong guy, because I wasn't the example, I was the reckoning. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was anxious. Hell, I'd already burned through that stage weeks ago. No, this was something different. I had that wired feeling like when you finally find the loose thread in a tangled knot and your fingers won't stop working it, even if it takes all night. I laid out every document I had on the dining room table. Approval forms, emails, violation notices, fine statements, certified mail receipts, even printouts of every single email I'd sent that got ignored. It looked like the crime scene from a very boring, very beige murder. Then I pulled up James on speaker and told him exactly what I wanted. I want them nailed to the wall, I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. He didn't laugh, didn't ask me to calm down, just said, "Good, because now we can." But he warned me, this wasn't going to be fast or easy. This kind of HOA mess doesn't just go away because you catch someone being petty. You need to build a case like you're trying to take down a corrupt politician. Every detail has to line up. Every hole needs to be plugged. He told me it would take weeks, maybe longer, multiple filings, motions, responses, time, money. I told him I didn't care, and I didn't, not anymore. This wasn't just about saving my house, not even just about making them pay back the fines or removing the lien. I wanted to expose the whole ugly machine, the way it ran behind closed doors, grinding up homeowners while smiling in newsletters. I wanted people to see it. That's when James told me we'd have to play it in 2 parts. Part 1 was the legal track. That meant filing for immediate injunctive relief to block further fines and force them to remove the lien. We'd use the improper approval process and the internal emails from Sarah to show they acted in bad faith, maybe even fraudulently. Part 2, that was the long game. Damages, attorney's fees, public exposure, and maybe, if we got lucky, a full-on countersuit. The kind that'd make them think twice before pulling this crap on anyone else. But first, we had to talk to Sarah, so I invited her over. She was nervous when she showed up, kept glancing around like Garrett might pop out of my hedges and shout, "Violation!" She clutched her purse like it was holding national secrets, which honestly wasn't far from the truth. I made us coffee and sat across from her at the table. Her hands were shaking when she pulled out the folder. "I shouldn't even have this," she said. "But you do," I told her. Inside were copies of everything. Garrett's emails, internal board messages, meeting notes. One particularly damning chain where Garrett mocked another homeowner for asking to install a wheelchair ramp, calling it an eyesore liability. That one made my stomach turn. Sarah didn't just bring receipts, she brought the whole damn cash register. "I've had doubts for a while," she said quietly. "But this was too far. They knew you followed the process." Garrett pushed it anyway because he doesn't like being challenged. He thinks if he doesn't hold the line, the whole place will fall apart. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about beige windows. It never was. It was about one man's ego and the illusion of control. He wanted to keep people scared, and I'd made the mistake of standing still when he wanted me to bend. But I wasn't bending. I was done playing defense. The next 2 weeks were a blur of emails, affidavits, late-night strategy calls, and printer ink. James worked like a surgeon, building out our case file with the precision of someone who'd done this 100 times before, but still gave a damn every single time. We built a timeline. We cataloged every document. Sarah provided a signed statement and agreed to testify, even though she was terrified. "I'm not the only one who hates the way Garrett runs things," she told me once. But I might be the only one with enough left to lose. I thanked her, not just for the documents, but for not looking away. And slowly, a plan took shape. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't some big gotcha moment you see in TV shows. It was smarter than that. Colder, more deliberate. We were going to take Garrett apart using his own rules. The ones he bent to punish me, we were going to twist them back into place and make them snap tight around his own neck. I wasn't just aiming to win my case. I was going to bury the lie they built their power on, and if everything went the way we planned, everyone was going to see exactly what kind of game these HOA tyrants were playing, and more importantly, how to stop them. The day we filed the motion, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. Not deep, not fully, but enough. Just knowing the ball was rolling, that the pressure was finally going the other way, gave me this weird kind of calm, like that moment right before a storm hits, when everything's too quiet, but you know something's about to change. James submitted everything. Sarah's statement, the email chains, the original approval with Heather's signature, the screenshots showing how Garrett backdated violation entries in their internal system. It was airtight, methodical, not angry, just precise. We were asking for injunctive relief to immediately remove the lien, halt all fines, and reimburse my legal costs. That was just the beginning. James said, "We're not swinging wild here, we're cutting tendons." That same week, we also sent out a notice to the full HOA membership. Officially, it came from my attorney's office, but I drafted the core of it myself. It was short, calm, factual, no rage. Just, here's what's happening, here's why, here's what the board isn't telling you. We attached the court filings and redacted email excerpts, just enough to crack the facade, and it worked. Within 2 days, I started getting texts. Neighbors I hadn't heard from in ages, some apologizing for not speaking up earlier, some just confused. One guy, Mark, 3 doors down, stopped me while I was taking out the trash and said, "Hey man, I always thought that whole window thing was total crap. I just didn't know it was this bad. I didn't blame anyone for staying quiet. That's how these HOAs operate. They count on your silence. They wear you down until speaking up feels more dangerous than staying low. But the tide was shifting. Then, Garrett struck back. It was almost funny how fast it happened, less than 72 hours after we filed. I woke up to another notice on my door, this one from the HOA's attorney. They were countersuing me, no joke. They claimed I had defamed the board by sharing internal correspondence, that I had weaponized confidential materials, and that my legal action constituted a malicious disruption of community peace. It was theatrical, like a bad episode of Law & Order, cul-de-sac unit. I called James, half laughing, half furious. "You seeing this?" He had already seen it. His response was cool as ever. "It means they're scared. Let 'em swing." We fired back hard. James filed a motion to dismiss their countersuit immediately and added a claim of abuse of process. We weren't just defending anymore. We were pressing. But Garrett wasn't done. He called an emergency board meeting, not for residents, just the board. Until Sarah showed up with her phone recording. She didn't say a word, just walked in, sat down, and hit record in full view of everyone. She didn't hide it. She didn't flinch. Garrett apparently lost it. Started shouting about breach of trust, disloyalty, and slander, which, of course, only made him sound guiltier. That footage, and I footage Thomas. Gold. You could see Garrett admit on camera that he knew the windows were pre-approved, and that he chose to act because once homeowners think they've got freedom, we lose the neighborhood. His exact words. Sarah sent them a video to James the same night. He added it to the supplemental exhibits, and that's when the board started to fracture. A few days later, Diane, one of Garrett's longtime allies on the board, resigned. No statement, just gone. Rumor was she saw the video and didn't want to be anywhere near what was coming. Around the same time, Garrett tried to send out his own message to residents. Classic damage control, all fluff, misinformation, outside interference, preserving values. It sounded like a politician after a DUI arrest, but people weren't buying it anymore. Not after Sarah's footage, not after the emails, not after the legal filing that laid out step by step how Garrett had targeted me, violated procedures, and jeopardized the financial standing of a homeowner with a valid approval on file. Then came the hearing. The judge, a woman named Judge Calloway, sharp as a tack, wasn't having any of Garrett's nonsense. Within the first 10 minutes, she interrupted the HOA's attorney and asked, "Can you explain how your client justifies a lien on a home based on an approval your board itself issued in writing?" Silence. You could have heard a pin drop in that courtroom. We laid out everything. James didn't even raise his voice. He didn't need to. The facts spoke louder than any speech ever could, and when he played the clip of Garrett from the emergency meeting, it was like watching a magician reveal the trick, only this one ended with someone getting legally roasted. Judge Calloway granted our motion in full. The lien was ordered to be removed immediately, all fines rescinded, and the board, the entire board, was instructed to comply with document turnover for a formal discovery process tied to my countersuit. I walked out of that courthouse like someone had handed me back my life, but I wasn't done, because this wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about making sure they couldn't do it to someone else. It started with a blog post. James suggested it, said people needed to know, not just the legal side, but the human side, the cost, not just the dollar signs and court rulings, but what it feels like to wake up every morning wondering if the place you call home is about to be yanked out from under you because some power-tripping HOA president doesn't like your window frames. So I sat down one weekend, poured a drink, and just told the story. All of it. Like I was talking to a neighbor. I kept it simple, direct. What happened, how it escalated, what it cost me. I didn't hide the meds. I didn't gloss over the anxiety or the nights I stood in my living room at 2 a.m. Convinced I was going to lose everything. I made sure to include the approval, the lien, the $12,000 in fines, and the part where the HOA tried to silence me through legal threats after they were caught lying. I ended it with one sentence. If it could happen to me, it can happen to anyone. A friend reposted it on a local HOA watchdog group. Someone else shared it on Reddit. From there, it just exploded. Next thing I knew, I was getting emails from people across the country. Not comments, emails. Strangers telling me they'd gone through the same thing. One guy in Arizona said his HOA tried to fine him for putting up a wheelchair ramp for his father. A woman in Florida said they threatened to foreclose because she installed a security camera. All of them thought they were alone. Until my story started bouncing around the internet like a warning flare. Local media reached out first. A reporter from a regional outlet showed up at my house with a cameraman and a windblown notepad. She was polite but visibly stunned when I showed her the paperwork. She'd covered HOA disputes before, she said, but never one where they openly admitted they were targeting someone. They ran the segment that week. From there, it snowballed. Bigger outlets picked it up. National ones. I did a radio interview, then a podcast, then two. I found myself saying things I never thought I'd say out loud. Phrases like misuse of power, community intimidation, and homeowner weaponization. At some point, I caught myself on the phone with a state rep's office giving a statement about HOA foreclosure loopholes and lien abuse. I actually laughed afterward. "Who the hell am I right now?" I said to Ash, who was home for a visit. She smiled. "You're the guy who didn't fold." Even Garrett couldn't ignore the heat anymore, especially not after the public records request hit. A local advocacy group got their hands on internal HOA communications through discovery. The emails, the meeting notes, the video of Garrett at the emergency board meeting where he basically said homeowners needed to be reminded who was in charge. The public didn't love that one. A petition went around calling for his resignation, then for the rest of the board, then for a full third-party audit of the HOA's finances. People started showing up to meetings that had been ghost towns for years. Folks who never even thought about HOA politics were raising their hands and asking questions like they were running for office. The next board meeting was standing room only. I wasn't planning to go, figured I'd made my point, but Sarah convinced me. "People need to see you," she said. "See that you're just a guy, not some internet warrior, a neighbor." So I went, and when I walked in, it got quiet. Not the hostile kind of quiet, not like before. This was different. I saw heads nodding. Some people even clapped, quietly at first. A few came over and shook my hand. I saw a couple folks from down the street who'd never made eye contact before, suddenly treating me like I'd just come home from war. And there was Garrett, sitting at the center of the table, pale and rigid, like a man trying to disappear into his own bones. He opened the meeting, voice shaky, and read a prepared statement about wanting what's best for the community and acknowledging recent concerns. But nobody was buying it. Then Sarah stood up. God bless her. She called for a vote of no confidence. It wasn't even close. Garrett stepped down that night. Not quietly, he made one last speech about thankless work and thankless neighbors, but it didn't matter. His grip was broken. People had seen behind the curtain. You can't unsee that. After that, a few other board members resigned. New elections were scheduled. Transparency reforms were introduced. They brought in an outside consultant to review their architectural processes and communication standards. It was like watching a company try to dig itself out of a PR disaster, except this wasn't a company. This was our neighborhood. And me? I got a letter in the mail from the new board a couple weeks later. It wasn't legal, just a card, simple, handwritten. It said, "Thank you for speaking up. You were right." I still have it. It sits right next to the copy of that first violation notice, just to remind me how far I came. It's strange. Looking back now, the house is still here. Same beige vinyl windows, same front porch with the cracked step I keep meaning to fix, same little flower bed I keep killing plants in, no matter how many tutorials I watch. From the outside, it looks like nothing ever happened, but everything changed. The lien's gone, the fines were wiped, the settlement from the board covered my legal bills and then some. James said I could have pushed for more, maybe even damages beyond the financials, but I didn't care about squeezing every last dime out of them. I just wanted peace, not silence, the fake kind they tried to enforce, but real peace, the kind you feel when the fight is finally over and you know you did what you had to do. I still live here. I thought about moving. I even went to a few open houses in non-HOA neighborhoods, drove around rural corners with big yards and no architectural committees waiting to pounce on paint colors. But something held me here. Maybe it's stubbornness. Maybe it's because I refuse to be chased off my own land. Or maybe it's because even with all the crap that happened, this is still my home. I built a life here, brick by brick, battle by battle, and I'm not giving that up just because someone in a golf shirt with a clipboard got drunk on authority. Ash comes to visit more often now. She still jokes that I'm semi-famous, like I'm some local folklore character, the man who beat the beige. We laugh about it sometimes. Other times, we don't, because the truth is, this thing left a mark, not the kind you see, but the kind that changes how you look at people, how you read between lines. I still get jumpy when I see mail with HOA letterhead. I still keep all my paperwork in 3 places, physical folder, digital drive, and a backup in the cloud. I document everything. Even the stuff that seems harmless, especially the stuff that seems harmless. That's the real lesson, I think. You never know what little thing is going to be the match that lights the fire. You do everything by the book, think you're safe, and then one day someone decides your beige is the wrong beige, and suddenly you're in court fighting to keep your house. If you'd told me 2 years ago I'd end up testifying in court, filing motions, giving interviews on homeowners' rights, I would have laughed in your face. I was just a guy replacing old windows. That's it. I didn't go looking for this fight. But once it found me, I didn't back down, and I'm proud of that. More than anything, I think what I took away from all this is how fragile the idea of control is. These HOAs, they wrap themselves in words like community and order and preservation. But sometimes, behind all that, it's just one guy's ego stacked on a bunch of bylaws nobody ever reads. One bully with a clipboard can mess up a dozen lives if nobody pushes back. I pushed back, and I didn't do it alone. That matters too. Sarah, James, even my daughter just being there for the rough nights, none of this would have worked without them. It's easy to feel alone when the walls start closing in, but you're not. There are people who will stand with you. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, sometimes I still walk through the neighborhood at night. Just a slow loop around the block, quiet streets lit by porch lights and the occasional glow of a TV through a window, and I'll see a kid's bike on a lawn, a dog barking 2 houses over, a neighbor watering plants in her slippers. Life, humming along, and I think this is what I fought for. Not the windows, the right to just live, without fear, without someone looking over my shoulder waiting to pounce, without being punished for existing the wrong way in someone else's eyes. Now, I sit on my porch with a cold drink, look out over my quiet little street, and know I earned every square inch of this place. And if you're going through something like this, if you feel that pressure building, that weight in your chest every time the mailbox clangs shut, just know you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you can win even if it takes every ounce of fight you've got. Because in the end, it's your home, and some things are worth going to war for.